Episode 32, Jakob Benschjold from Sweden, Swedish national team compound member. It's a little different than normal, but he's playing with some Barebow, kind of some training, some fun, some lighter side of Instagram, and you're going to learn all about that journey right here in episode 132. Well, welcome back to the Barebow Project. John, it's good to see you. We are here with a special guest, use words, Frank. A guest from across the pond here a little bit. It, it was sort of a kind of a joke. Saw some stuff on Instagram, then realized, oh, like okay, we're not this isn't just some random person wanting to play the Barebow game. So we're here with Swedish national team member, 900 club from JVD Open, World Championship gold medalist for field and 3D, right? Is that right?
So
Or
field team.
field, that's right. It was just field. But you were 3D,
We
you
just
were
went
3D
over
team
this.
member.
We literally
Shut
just
up,
went over this.
John. Shut up, you old timer. And
Oh.
current national record holder. Um, Sir, would you please introduce yourself because the way that we got to having this podcast is kind of entertaining. So let's get into it.
Yes, my name is Jakob Benschjold. As aforementioned, a member of the Swedish national team in compound. And so I've been a national team member since 2022 in the field and target team. And I've also done one trip with the 3D team.
Nice. And somehow, some way, so we have one of the top compound shooters in Sweden, and he posted a video on Instagram like, "Hey, if I get, I think it was 500 likes,
Yeah, I started out with
shoot bear."
500.
Yeah, started with 500. I'm gonna go shoot barebow. So you're a current pro staff shooter for PSC archery. I'm assuming Easton and Ramrod
That's
as
correct.
well, maybe a few
Yes.
others. So it is rare, but it does happen that we get a lot of higher end compound shooters that openly come out and are like, "Oh, I want to try barebow," you know. So you posted a post on Instagram, and I think it came across my feed, and I commented on it, or somebody tagged me. I don't remember. I was like, "Yes, get after it." Whatever the response, I thought was awesome, and then a light bulb went on. I was like, "This could be a fun conversation because you're younger, and it's fun, and it would be cool to kind of get some feedback of like, your comparison, blah blah blah." And you're like, "Good." And I was like, and I asked you about John, if you ever talked to John. Like, yeah, only in comments. And it was probably a joke knowing this guy, but long story short, you're like, "Good," because I have some questions. I was like, that's a perfect segue as the reason to have the podcast then, because you are a professional shooter for what it's worth, and um a world class shooter. So it's cool to kind of take a world class shooter in John Demmer. I am not classic myself in that category by any means. But and putting, and just bringing that together and seeing how, not only are we, there's some good growth there for all parties involved, in multiple ways. So welcome to the Barebow Project. You are officially the first compound shooter, I think, to be on the podcast. I've interviewed others on Peak Archery Project, but never on Barebow Project, so it's kind of cool that way. Um, so let's just kind of dive into it first of all. But let's talk about like what prompted you to put that post up. Like, was the interest already there prior? Was it someone in your DMs or in comments like, "Oh, do it with Barebow," like John just talked about a little bit ago before we started recording? Where did that come from?
I mean, looking at the comment sections from, my recent Facebook posts, particularly, since the JVD Open, you'd almost think that like someone egged me on to do this. But the truth is that from December until February, I kind of have my off season. So I don't need my compound shooting to be, absolutely on point. Uh, the important tournaments for me start coming in March. So I figured this could be little bit of a fun project. If enough people like go in and support it. So I thought, okay, I'll just put a post out there as kind of a feeler, and check the temperature, sort of. Is there any interest in this? And turns out there is. So I've done some other disciplines before. Like during the pandemic, we had split up nationals. So recurve would shoot one day, compound would shoot another day. And so I thought it'd be fun to shoot a recurve day and a compound day. So I did that for 1 year. But I have, to this day, despite my nationality, never shot a competition with barebow.
I like to he emphasized despite my nationality because definitely Sweden is sort of like big bear of barebow for sure. They definitely have some of the more solid shooters across the globe. But I digress. I know John. John, you play a little bit with compound in the off season too. A little bit indoor, mess around up
Yeah,
at
yeah,
you
a little bit more several years ago, but yeah, I still mess around with the compound boys.
not a lot, a couple times a year maybe. I don't know
Yeah,
about
I'll shoot the indoor leagues, or the indoor 3D or the paper with them. Yeah.
yeah. Um, I what bow and because it's a podcast and you should still do this for your sponsors, Jacob, just give a quick shout out. What compound are you shooting? What's your discipline there? What's your equipment? We can talk about all that and we'll get into the barebow stuff then too.
Okay, so a quick rundown is that I shoot a Dominator 40 from PSE, a Dominator X Duo 40, I should add, not the old Dominator. I shoot an Excel sight and scope, a true ball release, ramrod stabilizers, and Eastern arrows, fletched with, flex fletch vanes, biter nocks, all the works.
Nice. John, what compound were you shooting for indoor and 3D with us?
I used to shoot the old Matthews
Conquest.
C4.
Oh yeah, yeah. The
Right now the Concept X. Yeah.
Have that Hoyt Concept X. Okay, nice. I still haven't gotten a Concept X. I'm still have the Invicta 40, but one of these days I'll graduate with boys. So good deal. I guess then let's just talk about comparisons a little bit before we get into kind of some of the questions you had. What is one of the first things that you noticed when you picked up, or what direction, or who did you talk to, or where did you build your bow? What did you build your bow into? And as soon as you started shooting, let's get into like where's the comparisons? What was your first like, oh, this sucks, or oh, this is fun, but it still sucks kind of deal? What direction did that go? Jacob.
I mean, the biggest contrast is that in compound your progress is kind of linear and your performance is kind of even. Like if you are averaging 29 points per end, then you might be bouncing between a 285 and a 292, let's say, for an indoor round.
Mhm.
Whereas with barebow, I feel like I could shoot an average end of, let's say, 25 points, but some of my ends are like 29 points and some of my ends are 19. Like, it's very dependent on, factors that I haven't really had time to examine. Like, is my anchor point exactly where it should be? Is my tune where it should be? I really have no clue. My like most qualifying uh, factors coming into this is that I've shared a room with Ludwig and Leo, basically. And they've talked to me some about this. It just comes up in conversation, and I've picked up small things. Um, but a big comparison or like a contrast to compound also is like shot timing. Um, that is probably this point that I struggle with the most because without like any mental program or any, clicker per se, um, it's just so very different. I shoot a button with my compound, so that means that I just pull back, relax my fingers, I apply some pressure with my thumb, and then I start pulling. So as my palm extends, more and more pressure is put into the trigger, and that just makes it fire automatically. So I never have to think about releasing a string, or really don't have to think much about my anchor point either, because I have the peep sight, and that tells me if I'm in the correct place or not.
Yeah, it's that's a I think a common comparison between you said so you're shooting a thumb button, right? Do you
Yes, I'm
ever play
basically shooting
around?
at back tension though.
Yeah,
You're
back
shooting
tension
it
thumb
back
button.
to that. I think that's a good John. John, do you want to kind of maybe bridge that gap between those two comparisons of the compound, a fixed draw length thumb button sort of back tension release method to the difference between the way that you have found success as a shooter shooting barebow and your experience doing both.
So yeah, I think that's for those that come from the compound side that try to get into barebow a little bit or dabbing in it or just just having fun with it. I think those that are dedicated punchers, like Tim Gillingham is a puncher. Those are the ones that I think transition a little bit easier because they have the mental engagement of, let's shoot this arrow now. Where I think that's where they transition to bare bow a little bit easier because there's no automatic like release the arrow, everything just is nice and soft. So I think that's what probably Jacob is going to have a harder time with is transitioning from the mentality of just pull, 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 and eventually it's going to go because it's not going to be the same with us. You do have to have a little bit of mental engagement of your timing.
Yeah. No, that's good. Um, I can definitely concur with that though, because well, not from a compound standpoint, I shoot a compound like you do. I never punch. I'll sit on that thing forever. That actually probably comes more from Olympic recurve because when you're expanding through the clicker, like the goal is to have that sweet spot timing when you're shooting Olympic recurve. And I did that for decades, really. So, or I should say a decade and a half roughly. So like that was more natural, and then that transfers well to like shooting back tension, or I shoot like a resistance release with my compound and for hunting as well. All right, good. I think that's a good way to kind of set the tone for what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Jacob, you had some questions, things that you sent us in chat. So let's just get into it and let's talk through some of those questions.
Yes, and I'm thinking let's start on the topic of like execution. Um, so how do you teach someone the kind of shot control that you would need for like a punchier style of shooting, or in this case, a style of shooting where you don't have a command from the bow or the release that makes you fire? Because the recurve transition was quite easy because the clicker tells me when to let go, and so I just do. It's like it's just kind of built in. So how would you teach someone like a mental program of when to fire?
Good, John. You can go first.
All right. So, the way I would teach people is like you have the same mindset of like you have to get the arrow on the point, you have to aim, and that's when like when you're shooting your compound, when you're establishing that aim, you're not actually pulling through the target. You're not pulling through your shot yet. Same thing with the Olympic recurve. You establish aim and then you start pulling and doing your routine. So the same thing works for like the command shooters. You don't actually start engage. You don't mentally engage of. You don't get into that position of all right. I can fire whenever I want to. You don't get to that point yet until you establish aim, settle on the aim, and like enjoy the aim for whatever brief period of time if you're comfortable with 1 second or 2 seconds or 3 seconds, because you don't want to become a slave of uh point of aim trigger shooting, because that's what's going to lead you into panic and develop your shot faster and faster until the point where you're going to have a very, very big situation on your hand trying to fix it if you want to fix it. Then you have to like break down that whole notion of point of aim shooting. That's how like I try to talk people into you have to. I've been saying it for like 10 plus years. You have to be able to get the aim on enjoy the aim before you can move on to your next step. And my next step is command shooting, in a way that I meant. And I say command shooting is like I don't like get it on point and be like, all right, now boom. Like it's like, all right, I can get it there, aim. I'm watching the aim, sitting there floating. I'm like, all right, I'm comfortable shooting whenever I want to now. And it doesn't even matter. Just like when you're pulling through on your compound, it doesn't matter if the arrow or the point just dips out and then comes back in. You're still going to be pulling for the most part. You might slow down your pull a little bit or pause it for a brief moment, and then it starts gliding in, and then you start engaging again. I know some people shoot that way, but maybe not everybody. But that point coming out of the center X for you is not like a detriment to your shot because it's going to naturally want to come back. And that's how I engage my shot is like when I establish the aim, I'm like, all right, I can shoot whenever I want to now. And if it goes if you give yourself up to full control or you give your full control up to your shot, just like they do with like in Winning in Mind, where the sniper always said that he believes he can curve the bullet back to his target, even if he pulls the trigger and it's off whatever a foot. He believes he can pull it back in, and it's the same concept of it doesn't matter to me if the arrow breaks in the eight. If I give myself up, my body will naturally want to do its thing to get it back into the middle. And a
Mm.
lot of times, where my arrow breaks in the nine if I'm giving myself up, a lot of those nines are still just they're solid tens because my body will naturally want to make that small, minute, quick adjustment and put it back in.
Yeah.
So the important thing is when I do that command style shooting, I'm not like it doesn't have to be dead center. In an ideal world, I would love it to be, but I'm getting older, so it's not going to happen as often as it used to. But the idea is whenever it's even if it's outside the 10, still just you have to concentrate on making that good shot and still be ready and not have any hesitation. The problems usually come in when there is a hesitation, and then you see um, those famous yips from a lot of finger shooters because you do see it once in a while in the compound side where they give up for that brief moment and they think the bow's ready to fire, the trigger's ready to fire, but it actually doesn't because they're not quite there yet and they have that little yip. We do the same thing. The key is to not give in to that because that's when usually disaster happens.
Yeah, sometimes even after that yip and barebow, after like you can stay at full draw and you're engaged then because you reminded yourself, hey, I'm don't let go. And then you're like, okay, I'm good, and it goes back to the middle like real easy. But just to go back to the original question and from because my coaching brain goes on pretty often when on posts and stuff, I will say that if if one of the things that I started doing as a coach and as a shooter is I compartmentalize the shot process, especially with barebow, and work on those individual components. There's some people out there that think that that's doesn't carry over. I disagree because if you become more comfortable with the hold and practice the hold exactly how you want it to happen during the shot, you practice the release and learn to duplicate the exact same release in training and drills as you want in the shot, and you work on that bow arm and the follow through, which we've had discussions in the past, like especially like just amongst our group of friends or whatever or online, like a really solid bow arm will save a not great shot sometimes. And that's kind of what the the reference of that is similar to what like John was talking about, like not like of giving yourself up in a way, like you're just committed to the shot. You're not trying to control what's happening downrange. You're just committed to what's gonna happen, what's supposed to happen naturally of sorts. Maybe it's my explanation of it or my understanding of it, but I'm a big fan of shooting drills. I'm a huge fan of practicing until you can't get it wrong and trying to, and what happens is as you get better at those that compartmentalized portions of the shot process mentally, physically, the whole thing, they will come together. But you have to do them all. And I guess where some of the criticism does come from it is like people don't want to put that time in. There's like it does take time. Like you're not going to get a fix like that. Um, And a lot of times the fixes that you do use that have maybe a quicker impact, they just don't last as long. But um, so I don't know. Does that answer your questions per se for that one?
Partially, yeah. I so when I'm shooting my compound, I have a pretty rigid dialogue in my head. It's the same every time. I walk up and I'm basically telling myself, be determined, be strong, be decisive. And then as I anchor, I kind of do the shot IQ program of like, here we go, and then pull, 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 pull until the shot goes. So is there a dialogue that like that I could use for Barebow, do you think?
I'll start on this one just because maybe it's a little bit similar, but when I've done my best shooting, the only thing I remind myself of at full draw is, or before I even draw back, is about being relaxed, not and clearing my mind of anything else I might be thinking of, and telling myself to hold. Put it in the middle. I might be mentally or physically thinking of myself about holding. Just hold, stay. I think the word I use is stay because it's a one syllable repeatable thought. Stay, 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 and then it goes when it goes. So try not to. That's probably my the better version of myself as a shooter when I was really shooting a lot and practicing. Definitely had the best carryover, but
Mhm.
volume and drills also played a bigger part in that, and that's always been my downfall is time. But John, how about you? You definitely have the longest running, really like success rate in barebow, at least on the American side. How do you translate into that conversation?
Yeah, I really don't have a mental dialogue with myself. It's more confidence, trying to build the confidence. There is something to like trying to like self inner promote yourself, if I'm using that vocabulary kind of correctly. But trying to build up your internal confidence. Um, so like for me, it's like I almost like turn it into like an aiming game, and I want to see how tight I can get it. And then usually if I can do that, my confidence it builds up, and it's like it almost develops into like I can't miss, or like this was pretty easy. So for me, it's always trying to build my internal confidence up that it's almost too easy. And you're gonna get what you're gonna get in the end anyway. If you shoot an eight, yeah, whatever. We're all gonna shoot eights. It's not that big of a deal. But for me, there's really no like linear dialogue for me because for me, I always want to be on my toes. I think Dave said this once. He's always trying to think of three, four shots ahead. So like he can almost imagine a problem coming up in a couple shots because maybe he did two things in a row and maybe something changed in the process. Like it's getting a little too fast. So like the next time he's thinking shots ahead to prevent that from happening. And so I kind of do the same thing where I don't always have the same thing going forward. Um, I try to be more adaptive. So like if I notice my shots are getting faster and like, or like if I was talking to myself, I don't want my timing to be the same every time because then you become a slave to the timing. And then that could lead to bad habits of, all right, well, maybe you're not quite ready, but time's up. We got to go. And that can get that kind of stuff can lead to punchiness. But as long as like my main core is get it on aim, and after I establish aim, okay, I'm ready. It might only be a second. I might only be aiming for a second, but if I get it to a second, it's like boom, and it's there and it doesn't move. All right, I'm safe to move. But where I say I'm always on my toes, where if I feel like it's probably getting a little quicker or whatever, okay, then now I will mentally engage myself. I'm like, all right, I have to hold this a little bit longer, because I don't want to become a slave to that pattern because if I do, then I'm going to be giving up some things and timing will probably break down eventually and just lead to a lot of bad shots. So, yeah, I don't really have that particular thought process going through, but I do have it in a way where I establish aim and say, okay, we're good to go from here, and then that's when I move on to my next shot or the next cycle of the shot.
That kind of there's some advocacy in the Barebow world for using clickers as trainers. And I think John's explanation here is kind of like a perfect explanation of why that could backfire. I'm not saying it's going to. Maybe some people it'll work. I think my approach to that is listen, you do you until it doesn't work anymore. Then you got to try something else. Or you just take the advice you were given originally. But like that's one of the major downfalls to or you've shot Olympic recurve, so like you become very dependent on it. And when people aim too hard in Olympic recurve, they can't get through the clicker. Instead of just trusting, like just expand. The shot timing is a little bit easier to keep that sweet spot on the timing with Olympic recurve, but you're oftentimes shooting higher poundage, longer distances, blah blah blah. But you have stabilizers and all the other stuff to make that easier.
Well,
Um,
yeah, the stabilizer, and you have the like almost like perfect proper form where you're at full strength.
and you're a
Like
lower anchor. Yep.
if you're down here, you're going to be at your full strength, but you can't anchor there. So, but Olympics here, it's not that far away from being at full potential. But we're up here a little bit higher, and now like our strength wise, like we're never going to be in that strongest holding position. So, like all that kind of leads to potential issues, and then and, like we can work around most of that,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's why it's a little bit harder sometimes to get off the fingers. One of the reasons.
Yeah. Good.
Mhm.
All right. What's
Yeah, I
next?
guess
Let's dive
that
in.
answered two questions in one, because my next one was basically my introduction to like the Barebow group was posing a question of, what kind of clickers are people using? Like, are they using fingernails? Are they using mental triggers like a program, like
Oh,
Shot
yeah.
IQ, basically? And you two were very adamant that I don't.
I
That
would
I
I wouldn't
stick
say
to.
I wouldn't say adamant don't. You got to do what works for you. I do see like some people, and I do run into these people on several occasions. Those that like seem to struggle, I've seen it in the past where like they're shooting like 530s, which is good. I mean, it's not top tier stuff, but it's pretty good. It gets you in the upper, whatever 20%. It's going to get you there. But then they think, for the most part, they think, all right, I got to find a quick fix to get to the next level because I'm already here. Like there's no reason why I'm not shooting better. And well, usually the problem is like everybody has their full like everybody has a certain potential. Like you might not be whatever 540 shooter, 550 shooter. You might be a 530 shooter, and that's your home zone. But meant like we as humans, we always think we're better than we are. Sometimes it's true, but most of the time it's not true. We are what we are. Um, we're all not like 6'6" with a 48-inch vertical. We're not all Michael Jordan, we're Manute Bol, like we're just tall and we can't jump, but we still can be the best at what we do. So like people always think that this is the reason why pyramid schemes are so successful is because we always think there's more. And even though sometimes it doesn't make sense, we still fall for it because it sounds so good. It's got to be true. And then you'll run into a couple of people that it works really good. And they're like, all right, well, now this is definitely the way. But for me, like a lot of people that I run into, they hit some certain levels and then they break right off. And like I ran into a personal friend that we used to go back and forth all the time when we were coming up, and we got up to the point where we're shooting 550s off the shelf fairly regularly. Like it's not that uncommon. We're shooting 550s every other week off the shelf. Um, and then all of a sudden he just completely fell off. He's back down to 440s and was shooting 520 plus average the year before, and then the next year is up to like upper 530s. Um, but his problem, like he's like, all right, well, he's like, well, what are you doing that I'm doing wrong? I'm like, well, I'm actually like, I'm mentally involved in my shot. I don't give up. I don't back down from like anything. Like I'm shooting with extreme confidence. Even if I'm not shooting great, I'm shooting with extreme confidence. I think that helps the most. But he ran into grips here, and boom, his scores went right back up. But the problem was he stopped focusing on all the negative and started back into the confidence of like, oh, this is going to give me confidence. Like I'm going to shoot awesome with that. So he completely forgot everything that he was messing up and went to it. But the problem for him was 2 weeks later, he's right back down to 400. Like it was even worse because the problems he had prior to trying the grips here, like he didn't want to address any of those at all. And then it's like a new bow syndrome, right? You're not shooting great, but you think you should be shooting better. You grab a new bow, and all of a sudden, it's the best thing in the world. But the problem is now you're focused so intently on just enjoying the shot, you're forgetting all the little things that you're messing up with the old bow. And then 3 weeks later, your new bow is your old bow. And then you grab your old bow, and then it shoots better again. 2 weeks later, you're back down to where you were because you lost all your you lost what you were doing and you're focusing on the wrong things. And that's usually what happens when I run into people that try sears for the most part. Uh, I often describe them as band-aids because they're a quick fix. But if you're bleeding, no band-aid is going to fix the bleeding forever. You're going to have to fix what the main core issue is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And that's so true for every discipline as well.
Yeah.
Like not just Barebow. This is universal.
I think that's where
Yeah.
you have to be careful too, online. And this isn't necessarily directed at you, just people that might watch the podcast. I mean, you have to be careful. It's crazy because when we started this thing, like there was no information available. Like I think it was like 2018 where the discussion came up. And now everybody's got an opinion on everything, and there's a lot of information out there.
Mm,
John's current that explanation, I nobody can touch that. That was the perfect verbiage to explain that what your question was, that post on the Barebow group. And if anybody ever asks a question about a sear or a clicker or that like that verbiage right there was absolutely perfect. Nothing else can be added to it or taken away from it to make it better. It was
Now, I would say the people that do shoot sears or whatnot successfully, those are the people that fix their problems in the beginning,
oh
and they're not necessarily, I would say, running it to shoot high scores. They're just running it because that's what they do. But those are the people that did fix what was causing their problems in the first place, or they're just maintaining it and staying on top of it so it doesn't eat away at their shot too much.
yeah, I mean we might joke around with some of our friends like closely about shooting. Like there's banter with us always. But let's let the record be very clear. We're not telling you don't do it unless it doesn't work for you. Then go back to the drawing board and fix the original issues, right? Like that's
Yeah.
that's the let's go back and do that. But like there's proof without a doubt that people can shoot sears and shoot them well, and nobody is ever going to take that away. Results are data. Data is the only thing that you can call fact, whatever it is, whether it's wins, whether it's records, whether it's, whatever, you got to go with that as like that's the determining factor. And I think that there's something to be said for that across all boards. But yeah, anyways, I digress. That was the perfect explanation and a perfect follow-up. So I think that answered that question 150%. Anything else on that one, or you want to move on?
No, I'm very satisfied with that answer. So I guess we'll move on to a more technical question or like technique-wise question. Because I'm having a little bit of an issue finding an anchor point that I like. So I wanted to ask you, like, which facial features or which references do you think are solid enough, accurate enough to base an anchor point on?
I will tell you, I did not listen to John for like the first 2 years nearly well enough. I will admit that. I was insistent on just being corner of my mouth. It was just
Mhm.
too cushy and too. I shot well, but it just wasn't consistent enough. just from that aspect. And I ended up settling on my lower eye tooth is where I ended up settling for both indoor and outdoor. That's because I cater my tunes specifically so I can keep a similar anchor for all disciplines. Um, because I'm
Mhm.
not good enough at changing my anchor point like he is, because he can change the anchor point on a dime and be just as good, if not better. Um, he's better at it than, well, mostly anyone. But like, so with that being said, I will say he is definitely the one to kind of maybe give his feedback on how he learned where his most consistent place is and whatnot. So John, take that one away, please.
So it's always like if you have a distinguishable feature on your face and it's in a comfortable position, that's what I would use. I use I used to use this my index finger and I put it like so you have your gum line, right? And then you have your tooth that comes down your eye tooth, right? And so I used to put it like right in there'd be like a little triangle between my eye tooth and the next tooth behind. And I would put this finger right in it and it would not move. I might have like a millimeter of play, but I can superly distinctly feel that thing. It started hurting me a little bit for shooting 50 meters because I couldn't quite get 50 meters. I get about 45 with a pretty fast setup, so I actually ended up dropping down to underneath the tooth. So now I try to put the corner of my nail like right here, right on the tooth. So like this part of my finger is never going to change. So I try to put that on the corner and keep my fingers nice and tucked. But I also I also use a string blur so that gives me like a secondary reference. This is a primary. The string blur, what helps the string blur is keeping your head position left and right from turning. If you keep the string blur the same all the time, you're anchoring the same all the time, you're going to have roughly the same thing as what your peep sight is doing. The only problem is you still can do this. You can still lean it forward and backwards, still get same anchor, still get the same blur. So that's the only other feature that you're gonna have to like kind of pay attention to. Um, but that's how I do it. When I shot a lot of trad stuff when we were not allowed to string walk. I shoot like 30 yards for 3D was our max. Well, technically 33 because they gave you 10%.
Mm.
I actually used middle finger and I put that middle finger on top of the tooth up here. And that would get me a point on it right at 30 with a fast setup. And with a slower setup, it'd give me point on at 20. Um, but that's where I found because like I mean it's all about like trying to maximize the game that you play. I always thought the closer you can get that arrow to your eye and less crawl, the better, as long as your form is very, very strong and repeatable. Um, I find the form down here very strong and repeatable. So I might potentially give up some variances on crawl, like when a crawl gets this big with a little bit of head tilt, it's gonna move it a little bit more downrange. Um, but it's super strong. If I went back to just shooting longbow and trying to get high scores with longbow and 20 yards, I'd go right back up here. But it would take a good solid month of dedication to try to like perfect that again.
Mm. Yeah, I tried that once. I got a trad bow for fun. Thought I'd shoot it for like a 30 arrow competition. I could not gap shoot to save my life. Like my mind just wants to go back to middle. So I ended up taking my compound arrows, 2315s, with 200 grain points. So the arrow is, bordering on 600 grains. And I shot them out of a club recurve, so a wooden bow, 20 pounds, for 18-meter target. And that then I could aim like low yellow.
Yeah.
Funny. We've done crazy stuff like that for sure. It's funny though.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. And I know you had a string blur question, and that kind of is a good segue to that question, if you don't mind, if we kind of just jump right into the.
Yeah, absolutely. So for recurve, I used to align my string blur to the inside edge of the riser. And that worked good for me because I anchored like on the outs, or I put my nose on the string with like the
Mhm.
right corner of my nose touching. So my question is basically like, should I adjust my string blur to where I want to hit left or right, or is there like a best place to put it?
Go ahead, John.
So I think that well, the nice thing about the Olympic recurve, it's almost very, very cookie cutter. Even though it's not, it's probably the closest you can get with finger shooting, because
Mm,
everybody anchors almost the same exact spot. They usually have this string right here, right on your jaw. It's usually
yeah.
like somewhere right here, and so the string is going to be right here. It's almost all the same. But for
Mm,
barebow, I think it's for me anyway. It's a more stronger position to be in. If I'm back here. Obviously, that string is a little bit further back on the face, like than Olympic recurve. So it's going to be back here. So the string blur is going to be away from the inside of the riser. It's going to be more middle riser, edge of the riser, or maybe sometimes if people will anchor back here, it might even be the end of the plunger. I've had it where I've shot into the plunger for field worlds before and had no problem. I find it to be just a lot easier. Just find your anchor point and see what that strongest holding position is. And I don't have a lot of dexterity in my neck. So it's, I might have sometimes that my face will be turned just a little bit, but if that's my strongest holding position and I'm not wailing the crap out of my face, then we're good to go. And that the string blur might be right edge of the riser. For me right now, it's right edge of the riser, or like right on the maybe outside nut of the button.
Yeah, same. Not the same location. It's never been for me. It's always been either end of the plunger to middle of the plunger. I've never had string blur any closer than like middle to quarter of a plunger, depending on the size of the plunger, obviously. Um, but I think that's early on. I didn't look at string blur at all, and I think it was well.
Grace and I
You
hounded on
know,
you for
hold
years.
on, don't go there. One of the reasons I didn't and I still shot well, I mean, I was like 520s, 530s indoor, was because what John just said. Like, if you're really good at head placement and your head doesn't move and you're consistent with it, you can get away with not doing it unknowingly. But the further I got into barebow, the less repeatable I was with that because of all of, I mean, I don't know why. Maybe discipline changes, maybe just lack of discipline on my own shooting form, and I started paying attention to it. But I will say that one of the reasons I started paying attention to it more is one, it allows you to recognize when random left and rights come that you don't know why they're happening because everything
mm,
feels good. Number one. Number two, Grayson, if you go back through some of the podcasts where Grayson Partlow was on with me or with me and John, um, Grayson sort of uses the string blur as part of his checklist, like your internal mental verbiage. Like he doesn't
mm,
allow himself to move. And Grayson's one of, if Grayson was able to put full time into archery, like he would without a doubt be on Team USA and one of the top barebow shooters in the world. He's just that mentally disciplined. It's incredible. And like, but he uses the string blur as kind of like a step in the process or a checkpoint that he'll kind of aim before it, but he doesn't really focus on aim until this is done, this is done, this is done, this is done, and then until he kind of gives himself that moment where, okay, like John said earlier, you can let go at any time now. I'll let go when I'm ready. And then he's like, okay, I'm ready. Boom, gone. And, and even Grayson will say, it's a kind of it's a little bit of a testament to barebow. Like, not everybody shoots barebow the same because Grayson
Yep.
always said, like, oh, my release is terrible. Like, I got to work on this. I don't want to get too far off topic from the string blur thing, but the string blur creates that consistency and that you don't have to be perfect in every aspect of the shot process, just to kind of tie that whole thought together and understand that, it's not going to be the same for everyone. It doesn't have to be the same. So when you have Olympic recurve coaches telling you, well, the string blur has to be left of the riser, it has to be inside the pin, it has to be, they never shot barebow before. They don't understand because no one doesn't. And it's been proven time and time again. So,
mm,
anyways,
So yeah,
but
I just want to emphasize that it's where you need it to be at your strongest position. I'm a firm believer If you're struggling with your shot and you have to put tension in your neck or anything on your body to get the string blur to be where it's supposed to be, then it's not in the right spot.
So would you say that, because for compound we have a drill where we, to get your peep sight height set, you sort of pull back, you anchor, close your eyes, and then you get into position and you open your eyes, you check where the peep is. If it's,
Mhm.
too low, you raise it up. If it's too high, you put it down. So would you say that like a similar technique is applicable for the string blur? Like, can I pull back to where I feel the strongest, kind of open my eyes and see where my string blur is at, and that's close to where I should end up?
In an ideal world, yes. You might find that maybe your holding position on your neck is probably it might be wrong. Like I think that's like I don't know if you know Frederick
Lundmark?
Lundmark. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So he's notorious of pulling back and he leans in hard. So you might run into that situation where you pull back and you close your eyes and then you look and you might not even see the string blur at all. They're like it might be 3 feet off the bow or whatever. That would be where you would have to probably compromise your anchor point just a little bit to try to be able to use it. But put it in a position that's again strong and comfortable. There's a lot of things on your face that you can use. I know guys with glasses, like my anchor point probably won't work for some of the guys with glasses, but if you have glasses, then you just move it like one tooth forward, so that string gets away from your glasses. It's in front of your glasses. It's not like riding high and pushing your glasses into your eyes.
Mm. I'm lucky enough to be able to shoot without my glasses, so I just wear them for, everyday stuff. But yeah, I suppose I know Leo shoots in glasses,
Mhm.
at
I
least
do
from time
too.
to time.
I
Yeah, he
I
went
I
to the
prefer
optician with his bow,
glasses.
just like I did.
What kind of what's your vision like? Why do you wear glasses? Do you have to wear them or not? I guess
Uh,
far-sighted, not nearsighted. What's the
yeah, no, I see well close up.
got it?
It's at distance that it gets a little bit hard, but it's nothing severe. It's very, very mild, and it's mostly for, preventing headaches when I'm driving and just being able to read signs from further and stuff like that.
You're young, right, John? He doesn't know. He,
Yeah, I'm
John
getting to the
just
point.
started having some of those residual effects himself.
Yeah,
I've
I
never
gotta break.
have had
I
them.
gotta break down very soon to get an eye test for sure.
So at full draw with both eyes open, is the arrow and the target clear for you?
Uh, I guess oh man, I'm having a hard time like recollecting what it looks like, but
Next time you shoot, that's fine. Next time you shoot,
mm,
just take note it. Like you should be staring at the target and
hmm
not the arrow. It's no different than compound, but just take a note of is the arrow clear or not? Because like for me, if I shoot both eyes open, no help with blocking out this eye a little bit, I see two arrows. They're kind of translucent a little bit, and they sit just like that. They're just over each other a little bit. And if I can shoot great that way. I great groups depending on which arrow I aim with. And my group will go, I'll go bang, bang, middle, middle, and then perfect shot 3 inches left. No reason whatsoever. And then all of a sudden it'll be middle, middle, 3 inches right. And it just depends on which arrow I happen to cover the middle with. So I wear glasses and usually just put like scotch tape,
hmm
just to let light in, but block out this eye. And that clears everything up and there's no issues. But it's just my eyes, I have astigmatism nearsighted, but even that's starting to go because I'm getting old. The eyes don't adjust like they used to. Seeing string crawl is miserable. Like that stuff's starting to creep in. So it is what
Mm.
it is. I don't want to complain about it, but I am. So whatever. Um, anyways, no, that's good stuff. What else did you want to hit on? I'm looking at your list kind of in the peripheral here. We hit a lot of stuff and then some. Um,
hmm
anything else that like a hot topic that you really wanted to make sure we covered, or Feel like some stuff was answered.
I mean, yeah, 90% like all the important stuff has been covered, I feel like, but um I have a few options ahead of me arrow-wise. So I could keep shooting like a light, thin carbon shaft, or I could get my dad's arrows in, which are, RX-7s that I built for, his indoor game 2 years ago. They're, almost max length. They're 140 grain points, I think, 4-inch feathers, the works. But would you say, like, if it spines out correctly, would you be comfortable shooting an arrow like that at a lower poundage? Because I only really have access to, limbs up to 30 pounds because I'm borrowing kit.
I'll tell you in our he shoots for Easton. I'll tell you in our experience or my opinion on the big arrow, little arrow. What is your poundage in? You're at 30 pounds at what draw length?
No, I'm shooting 28-pound limbs and I'm getting about 32 pounds out of them.
32 out. Yeah, you can make that work. You just have to shoot a lower spine arrow.
Mhm.
I think a lower spine arrow is going to be a little bit more forgiving on errant shots. If you have a super, super disciplined shot process and you're super consistent, a 23 diameter you can get away with, or maybe somewhere in the like 19 millimeter range or something like that, like the Easton Super Drives or whatever. However, you know, that you have to, or you can go middle of the road, like the 6.5 millimeter Easton, the only thing that stinks a little bit with those arrows is that they're short. They're a short from manufacturer arrow shaft. So
Mm.
got to load up weight or play with. And a lot of those arrows are only available in like the lightest is like a 500 spine, which is
Mm.
difficult for you to get away with at 32 pounds. It can be done. You shot 26s or whatever. I don't know, remember what you said. You were trying to get point on when you were trying to get point on when you were trying to
Shooting
get
some crowd.
wasn't going well. So it can be done. I mean, anything can be done, but if you're super consistent, like I mean, I've seen John shoot 290 out of 300s with 23 diameter arrows and with Carbon Express recurve RZs. So
Mm.
it can be done. There's no question. Some people shoot great with them. Eric Janssen, he shoots a 23 diameter. I don't know how he doesn't go through 2 dozen arrows every year, but he just slams them down the middle and they go where they go. He's got some kind of secret sauce or something for that. So, it can be done for
And
sure. And you can get away.
and and, and Ollie shoots 30 pounds and shoots aces.
Yeah. Yeah, correct. That's right.
So what I would do, like, because you're probably you're not in that position to just try to maximize everything yet anyway. Um, I would just go no hesitation, just go shoot skinnies and shoot them down. I don't know if you have access to grabbing somebody's like 800 spine or whatever. But that's probably where I would be at for a parallel shaft. At 32 pounds, I'd probably shoot like 800 spine.
Didn't you say you're shooting Inspires? Easton Inspires?
Yeah.
Just to start and continue with what you're doing. Like you can
Yeah.
do
I
stuff.
so I shot I shot the indoor nats 1 year with my Nano Pro Extremes. And if you shoot target arrows, you know how small they are. They're smaller than your normal X10. And I shot upper 560s with those. I shot those extremely consistent. I never hit the highs of highs, but my average with those were probably the highest average arrow I could shoot was with those. Um, so unless if I'm seeing things really, really well and I can distinguish the tip of the arrow and not like get like blurry vision or whatever, I could shoot the highs of highs with 23s, but I'll also shoot some low end averages fairly frequently. And with like my maximum RZs, which was like a 18 mil, uh, yeah, I think that wait, yeah, like an 18 whatever diameter, 18 sixteenths diameter. Um, or 1864s. I was very consistent. I could still hit really high highs, but my average was higher. But my nano average was higher than the RZs, but I would never come close to my top end scores that I could shoot with the RZs. but I would eliminate a lot of the very, very low end. I think the worst score I ever threw down with a nano was 558 or something.
Mm.
Um, so it was like it's just one of those things. Like I would have no problem just shooting skinnies. I'm hoping to get a dozen of the new X10s, the parallel ones. I got a dozen coming in like the 700 spine, and if they shoot good, I have no problem shooting them all year. Especially knowing what I know in the past, where how my averages sit over like 10, 15, 20 rounds, how they sit. Like, yeah, I might not be able to get the highest of high scores, but my average is going to be better than anything I've shot before. So, unless I'm on the low end hoping to try to catch someone that's better than me, then maybe I'll risk it and go with the fatter arrow. But if not, I'll just run the skinnies and be okay with it.
Yeah. No, I think I think it's a great explanation. You're so early in the game, it's probably way down the road from if you even get
Mm.
to that point. I mean, maybe you'll like it.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I feel like I should address that. Like, just put some worries at rest for
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
potential sponsors. Like, I'm not making a full-time switch.
Yeah.
This is just a
No,
fun
but
side
it's going to
project.
answer questions for other people, and I think that's the key
Yeah,
component.
yeah.
Maybe
Yeah, no, I think that's like where I become a useful idiot for the Barebow community. Like I am
I like it.
like I
Well,
am very knowledgeable in archery as a whole, but Barebow specifically is just not where that knowledge is. Like, and of course, there's positive transfer. Like a lot of the things that I know about competing and the mental stuff that translates. But there's so many little puzzle pieces that I don't have when it comes to Barebow.
yeah,
I think the arrow situation is one of those that do not transfer the same directly, because like when you're shooting compound, I don't know what size pin you're using, but when I shoot, it's a 19 thousandths.
Mm.
Um, it's always 19 thousandths if I'm shooting a very skinny arrow or I'm shooting 27s. It's always a 19 thousandths. So the arrow diameter has no impact on my aiming. It only has impact on scoring.
Mm.
For barebow, like that's a big difference. If you look at a target with a micro, like a real true micro, like an X10 or a Carbon Express Nano Pro Extreme, it's going to look way different. Like my arrow will be inside the nine from side to side. Um, or if I shoot a 23, it's going to be six ring to six ring. And if I shoot a 27, God forbid, it's like a four to a four ring.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
very, very
so you've
harder.
tried it, is what you're saying.
It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to find the top of the arrow if you're aiming with the top of the arrow with a fatter arrow.
Yeah,
No,
some people
that's
do
going to
like.
be a tough transition for sure. Because I'm shooting a 29 pin with a 6 time magnification, so that covers the X and about halfway into the recurve 10.
Yeah.
Okay. Some people like shooting the 23 or bigger, or, well, 23 arrow or a bigger arrow just because it covers the gold.
Mhm.
Like some people, that helps them dealing with the dreaded, panic. So it kind of gets rid of that gold altogether. You nestle the 12 o'clock spot on the arrow, top of the nine ring, bottom of the nine ring. In some cases, people shoot that like with a lollipop instead of aiming
Mm.
point on, they're below. That's what he does. It varies for everyone. It's a personal preference thing at that point. There's no
Mm.
right or wrong way. It's whatever way works best for you. And if anybody tells you different, they're full of shit. So, but anyways, that's good. Very
Mm.
good stuff. And I think the other part of this, just again, you're not switching to Barebow, but
Mm.
I think a lot because you have such a vast knowledge in archery, the questions that are being answered will help other shooters, Barebow, recurve, or other compound shooters be like, hey, there's this podcast with you, and that answered a lot of those transitional questions from going from one discipline to the next. It's only going to make you stronger as an archer, playing around and maybe developing another 5% on your mental game to get some consistency in barebow because it is hard
Mm.
in that regard. There's more things for you to think about and do and accomplish with every arrow compared to compound. And if nothing else, you use it as a training aid to make your compound better for when the season does roll around come March or whatever. So, all right. Lots of,
Can I make
go
yeah, can
ahead.
I give a couple suggestions on when you're trying to transition or try to take it serious for, whatever, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or, whatever it may be. I think in the very, very beginning, I think blind bail is very, very important to develop what your shot needs to feel like. Like going back to where I said I'd try to give myself up completely to the shot, and my body might make micro adjustments to get the arrow back in the middle, but you still need that foundation of what your shot needs to be from start to beginning. And most of it is needs you need to get down, and this is where blind bail helps, is you need to get this feeling down, however you want it to be. When I'm shooting good, mine is boom, boom, that's it. It's going to have that same direction all the time, and that's what helps gets my fingers off the string the easiest. And sometimes when I'm aiming and I shoot, I don't even think about letting go of the arrow. It actually just does it on its own. And when I'm shooting really, really well, a lot of times it's on autopilot. But it falls back to the same movements over and over and over again. And the times that I don't do that is usually when I build up a lot of tension, or my body gives up trying to get it in the middle, where like maybe it went off, but my mind's fast enough that my body tries to correct it and try to just steer things over a little bit. Um, but that's something that it would be very, very useful in the very beginning, is to get this down where however you want it to be. Mine's always been, since I'm up higher, it's always easier to get it straight across. Some people do this, and I don't think that's a great thing, because you're putting a lot of torque in that string coming down. Some people do, they touch their shoulders. I
Mm.
always thought is if your arrow is going this way, it's always easier for your hand to go the same direction. So I always came back to basically I want to touch the earlobe all the time, and that gives me that same direction. Just like on your compound, when you're shooting back tension, you always have the same boom, same. If you're doing
Yeah.
this, and you know this for a fact, when you shoot compound, you're doing this and you do this, you're gonna be shooting some high nines, you're like, oh, what the heck happened? And then you watch video and you're like, oh, idiot, I came down. Or if I did this, a lot of times they nosedive, because it wants to follow the direction of your arm. So I
Mm.
would think that's very, very important in the beginning, is try to get that direction down where it's ingrained, where it's automatic.
So to my earlobe is your tip.
Well, that's where I do it, because that's my
Okay.
holding position wants me to go there.
Mm.
I just to go back to the previous conversations, you have to find what works best for you. You
Yeah.
know, it could be for you, it might be a little bit more explosive. Like we explain it as like being dynamic and not dynamic, like a big dynamic um, release can have drawbacks to it. It can turn into explosions. It can have, instead of just adopting the idea of like if you proper hand position, letting the string pull through the fingers, but you're not like, it's not like you don't know it's happening all the time. Like I think John just said it actually. Sometimes he doesn't know the release is coming,
Mm.
but it works because he's just in the middle, so it doesn't matter. And then, but like training the actuals where the compartmentalization came in. Train that part of the shot. Train, like focus on it. Blind bell, you close your eyes. I'm sure you do it with compound in some regard or have at some point in time. Like you
Mm.
can hyper focus on that thing because your eyes are closed. So you just knocked one sense off of your senses, and it allows you to magnify the focus on what exactly you want this to do from a Barebow standpoint, and it just finishes. Like I finish behind my jaw. I don't finish up my ear. I finish behind my jaw. And that changes a little bit depending on if I'm shooting a hunting bow at 49 pounds or a target bow at um, 38 pounds. It's going to naturally change just because the amount of tension that I'm holding in some regard.
Mm.
But the movement's the same. The the
Mm.
concept is the same, but I do have to train it extensively, especially when I have long breaks like anybody else and other things. So no, that's good. That's good information, John. Honestly, this whole podcast has been a plethora of information that's going to be useful for current barebow shooters as well, or ones that might be one of going back and forth to compound from the barebow side.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I hope so. Speaking of a dynamic shot, um, when I when I execute with my compound, I have a pretty explosive shot. So I push into the bow a lot and I pull a lot. Like I imagine my elbow is like tied up with a lasso and being pulled to the wall behind me, basically. And so I'm increasing that pressure throughout the whole shot, while letting the button slide into my thumb more and more and more. And that's how my shot fires. Um, I don't know if that will have like some consequences to my barebow shooting. Maybe that's too dynamic. You said you differentiate between a dynamic shot and a dynamic shot.
I'll speak from my point of view and I'll let John comment. Only the reason that, in my opinion, that the shot process changes a little bit between the three is one, compound, you're holding more weight in regards to the tension that you have at full draw because you're pulling against the back wall.
Mm.
Maybe poundage wise, you're in the same ballpark or within some percentage, but
Mm.
you're pulling harder into the back wall essentially. In recurve, just the dynamics of the bow make the follow through change a little bit. The long stabilizer, the V bars, the sight, and the fact that you have to kind of get the bow out of the way in some regards on the follow through. When you're here and that clicker goes and your fingers come back and you're dipping the hand in some ways that the bow tips all the way forward because you have V bars, extension bars on the top, whatever weight you're carrying. Now everybody's shooting ACU, the SOS system, whatever stuff you have
Mm.
on your bow,
Angry
right?
bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with Barebow, we don't have things like long stabilizers and other stuff, but I think the principle still stays the same, and it may vary for a compound shooter to go to Barebow versus a Barebow shooter going to compound, just the same. Like the it depends on what your current follow through is. Now you're already a compound guy. I don't know if I wouldn't want to create any bad habits for your compound by switching to Barebow. Maybe it won't. Maybe that's just being overly concerned. But John, what do you think in regards to that, the dynamic, not dynamic conversation and comparing one to the other?
It's so yeah, when you're pulling on the nice thing about the compound is if you're shooting a 29-inch draw bow, you're shooting 29 inches. You can pull on that wall kind of hard, but you're going to be usually very consistent on how hard you're pulling on that wall. So you're going to get the same result. With the recurve, it's a little bit harder because you might be shoot. You don't know if the harder you pull, the farther back you're going to get. You can get into the bad habit of you might be overextending a little bit, and then you're going to get into the habit of you might get into the problems of okay, you might have a little bit more facial contact, which if you when you paper tune your compound, you know exactly what facial contact does to your shaft at paper. You can turn into 3-inch tears no problem from unexplicably from like through 3 yards away. They could still be 3-inch tears. So you'll still get that problem with the barebow side too if you overextend by pulling hard. I think ideally you want like more of a controlled, maybe a controlled dynamic because the bow is going to be a lot slower than your compound, so that arrow is going to take a lot longer to clear, and you're shooting like plunger buttons. So there's more things to get contact on the arrow when it's trying to get through. The more dynamic you are on your follow through, you're running more of a risk of getting that contact.
Especially if
Um,
you don't have a really, really solid tune. Like if you have arrow contact from a poor tune, that just magnifies that error.
Yeah, like I can so like I can to get contact issues, like I could tell you like from way back when I was practicing 50 meters when before prior to world records and stuff, the only 50 meters I ever shot was for target nats and that was it. Um, I could shoot like a certain level and I changed arrow companies. I went to Carbon Express. This went from like a parallel shaft to a barreled shaft, and I found out pretty fast what the barrel shaft does to my dynamics of the arrow. I was shooting the same spine and I was shooting pretty good. not great, but pretty good. The barrel shafts would hit in the middle, like they'd hit 8, 9 ring almost every time from 50 meters, but my scores were kind of like way up and down. I'd shoot like a 59 one end, the next end would be 51, and they both felt the same, and they would go on for like 3 days in a row, and was getting mad, and I was gonna grab my Nano Pro Extreme, and I was getting ready to snap it in half, and then all of a sudden I see marks on my arrow. I was getting some pretty good contact on it, and I ended up changing to a spine and a half weaker, and all of a sudden it all went away. So if you're on that borderline tune with the dynamic, you can potentially run into a lot of contact issues where you're actually shooting pretty good, but your scores might not be very good, or as good as they can be, just because of that contact. And I saw it on my nanos because they have like this ice coating type thing on them, so they were like almost like a fragile coating, and the coating would
Hmm.
actually just they'd whiten up because of the contact. But if I was shooting straight carbon with no coating on it, I probably wouldn't
So
have ever seen it. Yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, that's probably one. I bet you, John, and this is just me shooting off topic. I bet you lack of proper like full on tune holds more shooters back than they realize because we see like a lot of really good shooters that that come over, and that probably is one of the things that actually it's like a it's like a I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a small little blip in the matrix that keeps a really good shooter from being great because they're just not great at tuning. Um, and some, or you're just being lazy. I'll claim that one. Sometimes I just don't care. I just want to shoot. I'm like whatever. But like I said, you're not going anywhere, right? You're still shooting compound. It's just for fun. So we're getting a little deep in the weeds on stuff, but whatever. It's you seem like a little bit of an archery nerd, so or you wouldn't be playing with Barebow, so I'm sure you enjoy the conversation. But
Yeah, no, you're entirely right. Um, I hear people saying that like, oh, archery is not a spectator sport and all this. Like, there's no entertainment value. Like, I used to watch back when it was not on Archery Plus. I used to watch, every World Cup, every Indoor World Cup, World Championships, World Cup Finals, Lancaster, Vegas, like everything I could get my hands on, and I still do. Like everything. Obviously, I go to some of the World Cups, and so I don't feel like I should be paying for Archery Plus. But because I get to see it firsthand many of the times. But I mean, I used to absolutely scour the internet for like archery related content. Um, Sorry, I don't know where my train of thought was
it's
leading
okay.
me.
It's all right.
But yeah,
We go
archery
down
nerd,
holes all the time.
in a nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. All right. I mean, I don't even know how long we're into this, but it's been quite a while. Anything else before we kind of close up the podcast for you?
Ooh. I mean, there's things I want to ask, but I think that'll, put us another 30 minutes into the podcast, and I think you probably already have a lot of material to cover it that I can just go back and listen to, like
Let's
basic
do one
tuning
more
advice.
because if you have more, let's do one more and then we'll call it a day. It's fine.
Okay, so I think this one was on the questions that I sent in earlier, but I have a Shibuya rest on my current bow. Is there any reason why I should get that switched to like a more sturdy wire rest? Like what are there any drawbacks to using a basic recurve rest on a barebow?
So it's a stick on rest. Just a
Yes.
okay. I
Is
don't.
it the Shibuya have a medium wire or real thin wire?
I mean, it's thin compared to the barebow wires that I've seen. It's the one that I mean, it's on
Is it a
9
Shibuya
to 10
Ultimate?
Olympic bows.
Um,
Sorry, what was
yeah.
that?
Is it like a what did they make like a Shibuya Ultimate? Is that what they call it? I'm trying to
I
remember.
think
I haven't.
so.
Okay.
Looking at
Yeah, I think that if you shoot light arrows, I don't think that's a problem.
Hmm.
You might run into an issue if you're shooting heavy arrows, you might be breaking wires due to the downward force that we put on that arrow a little bit. But
Yeah, because
But
I've noticed like plenty of barebow shooters shoot rests that, are intended for recurve, but none of the recurve shooters are shooting rests that are intended for barebow.
That's because they're losers. I'm sorry, I said that out loud. No, I think what John said. I pulled up that rest to look at. Actually, it looks like a relatively beefy wire on it, but it's a
yeah,
pitch.
I think so.
So it's not that bad, but the integrity of the you put a heavier arrow on that over time, and do you worry about the integrity of double stick tape? I don't know. I mean, Brady gets away with it, and some other indoor shooters that shoot. He shoots like 26s or 27s for Vegas every year, and for Lancaster, and then switches to smaller shafts for the World Cup and
Yeah.
all that other stuff. So obviously it can be done. But yes, traditionally in barebow, just the down pressure and maybe kind of with string walking, you'll see like the AA free flight, the buy drop, the Gabriel, or it's not Gabriel, it's Dragbo buy drop. I actually have a sitting right here. He's from over your way. Trying to think of what other. The Spigarelli ZT is a common one. I'm not a huge fan of that one, just
But
but it
but for your one crawl distance, you're tuning
yeah.
your bow anyway for that. So I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue. Like you'll run more into issues if you wanted to shoot field or something with it. Then I would probably go with something a little bit different because you're going to put a lot of different variances of flex on that rest. Then you might want something a little bit stiffer. But if you were to shoot a Olympic style rest, then that would probably be the one because I do believe, if I remember correctly, it's one of the stiffer wires out there for a recurve rest.
It looks like it just from the pictures, but I mean that could be deceiving. So just run it until it doesn't work anymore. You'll find out. Trial and error. So
Yeah.
good enough. Well, listen. Don't feel like even after the podcast, you have more questions or whatever. Shoot to the group message. And maybe we'll follow up or like let us know how it's going. Keep us updated. You get your first like 300 or 600 round in or whatever, and if you shoot an actual tournament, give us a heads up and see how it's going. Maybe we can pull some more compound shooters over to the dark side of Barebow.
So the one thing I did notice shooting compound when I mess with compound and I think I'm screwing or I think I'm shooting good with the recurve and then I do mess with compound indoors. I do notice little micro adjustments a lot faster with a compound because it's going to give you the purest form of what you're doing wrong. You're going to recognize it a lot faster. Um, with the recurve, it's a lot harder to diagnose it because, all right, was it my grip? Was it my fingers? Because finger pressure is very important. The amount of hook you put on that string, the amount of top finger pressure, middle finger pressure can make that arrow dance up and down, left and right.
Mm.
But what I do notice with the compound sometimes is like if I'm getting a little left and right issues and I can't figure out what it is, and then like the next week I'm shooting indoor paper with the compound and I have left and right issues, and I'm like, all right, I'm messing up my grip once in a while with my recurve. Let's fix that. I do notice it a lot faster. You'll probably notice that if you bounce back and forth when you're still just trying to stay in compound shape. You'll probably notice that a lot quicker with the compound. If like you start blowing like right edge tens or something, you're like, all right, well obviously I'm doing this with my recurve too, so we can fix that too, and I can be a little bit more on top of that.
It's good enough.
Mhm. Yeah, we didn't even get into like finger placement and pressure and stuff like that, but I think there's probably material out there that I could find, or maybe you have, like not a manual on it, but videos or podcasts or stuff like that. But that's also pretty new to me, like how to grip the string properly, how to, apply pressure with your fingers and stuff like that.
Yeah, that we've covered it multiple times in multiple videos, but it's all good. Uh,
So
um,
yeah, so a really quick one, and without digging a whole lot, like Kissick Lee has some stuff on just those basic principles.
Mm.
Um, just like how you grip your bow, what's the most stable position to be for gripping your bow, and then like what's the most stable for your finger pressure. The compound or the Olympic and the barebow side doesn't really vary any in that. They're going to be basically one and the same.
Yeah, I think I know we've had this conversation. We probably go a little bit closer to like 45 on the top, 45 in the middle, 10% on the bottom. Maybe it varies once in a while. I know, John, you've used those numbers before. I don't know if it's still that right now. It could change
Yeah, it's usually like
somewhere,
40, 50, 10, something like that.
somewhere there, somewhere, and just because we're string walking, so all three fingers are together, and it's kind of the same concept of what Kisically actually has taught, where you square the string is going to flow quicker and easier and more smoothly through the fingers when it's squared on that end.
Mm.
Um, as far as hook, he shoots a deep hook. I shoot a deep hook. Doesn't mean you need many others shoot deep hooks. It doesn't mean you have to. If you watch the,
Well, well, let's specify real quick what
go ahead.
my version of deep hook is just finger curl. Like I'm not talking deep. I'm not talking deep as in
Yeah. Good,
I'm
fair.
not talking deep like being back here. I'm talking like I'm hooking here, but my finger curl when I'm on the string is curled pretty good. That's what I consider deep hook. Some people consider deep hook holding the string way back here on the second knuckle, but I consider it deep being just finger curl. If I shoot shallow curl, a lot of times you probably won't run into it, but a lot of times for me, if I shot shallow curl, I used to a long time ago, I would run into issues on wet days, rainy days, very humid days. I would get some finger slippage. It'd come right off the finger tab.
Yeah.
So that's why I run deep hook.
You watch a guy like Mike Fisher from Australia, 2000, I want to say 2018 or 19 classic champion. He there's a great video of him shooting in the finals, and like you want to talk about a shallow hook, like that's a shallow hook. It's like ready to go at any point in time. But he shot that way when he shot Olympic recurve too, and it just carried over. So that's what he does. Like it, and it works for him. You can go to just another example of a hook. Butch Johnson, rest in peace. Because he passed away, I believe, in the last year. Multiple time U.S. Olympic recurve team member. He shot, and there's also video from Lancaster of him. He shot, one finger, two below Olympic recurve, but his bottom finger, and it was relatively deep, but his bottom finger like slipped right off almost every arrow. So he was really only shooting with two fingers.
Hmm.
So there's multiple ways to do that. We'll talk another an older fella that shoots with me and John here in Pennsylvania, um, Phil Donahue. He's an older guy,
Paul,
or
but okay.
Paul. Sorry, Phil.
He's
Paul.
a
Yeah.
he does have a talk show.
Yeah, I know. My bad. That's funny. But he actually he can't bend his index finger, so he actually shoots this way.
Oh.
It's the craziest thing. But man, that old buzzer can shoot. The guy's been shooting a long time. He shot with my dad when I was little. Like that's the guy's been around for a long time. But me, he's just the
Mm.
nicest person in the world. But like, there's good video of him in the classic. So there's options. You just got to find out which one works for you.
My light's blinking in the back. We might lose power.
All right. Well, now let's close this up real quick. Where can everybody follow you and kind of follow this journey?
So I'll be posting pretty much every time I practice with the barebow. That'll probably be once a week or twice. You can follow me at Instagram at Jakob Benschjold. So you'll probably have the spelling in the podcast name
I'll
if
put it.
anybody
I'll put your
needs to spell
Instagram
it.
or whatever. I'll put the picture or whatever. I'll put it in the episode right here.
Yeah, but basically Jakob Benschjold everywhere. Instagram, Facebook. I have like one or two YouTube videos, but Instagram and Facebook are my primary social networks. So that's where they'll find updates on both this journey and on any archery related endeavors.
Wonderful. Well, listen, good luck to you for your compound indoor season, and we're gonna enjoy kind of touching base and watching your barebow adventure as it goes. It's just good. It's good for the sport. to
Mhm.
have the interactions and the crossover. So it's a great way to kind of open the indoor season. So good luck, man. If you need anything, you know how to get a hold of us. We can chat anytime. All right.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Perfect. All right, John. Anything else for you?
No, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, for sure. It was fun. It's a nice way to get back into the swing of things. All right, everyone. The Barrel Project is out. You'll probably see John at Lancaster. I am not sure I'm going to be there yet. I don't know. I talked to this young man about coming over, but it's not quite in the cards for this year. Maybe we'll get him to come over some other time. Um, Barebow Project, the Barebow Bulletin was updated. This month's Barebow Bulletin is all about Lancaster Archery Supply and their classic shoot. So it's got literally everything in it that you need to know about this year's changes with the team shoot, stuff like that. Shout out to Brian Brady for writing that article for me. Um, and with that being said, John, good seeing you, my friend. I know you got a classic warm up coming, um, and we're good to go. All right.
Yep.
All right, guys. See you later. Have a good one.
You too.
Peace out.